The lives of William Powell Frith. Frith born 1819, died in 1909. Here he is. Now, if you could go to room 24 at the National Portrait Gallery, you would be able to see him. This is a self-portrait of a young man. So it was 1838. So he was around 19 at that time. You can see him in half profile, light brown hair, deep set eyes. The resolution is not fantastic, but he's got a brown coat on, a black cravat, and a white shirt, and a sort of dark reddish brown background. Quite delicate features, full lips, serious, reflective, unsmiling. So we wonder what thoughts were going on in his head at that time. Perhaps a look of romantic intensity. And look at the hair, the sort of flopping down from either side of his face. And although, of course, he's in half profile, you can probably work out that there's a centre parting there. And I was thinking, well, who might he have modelled that on? Well, various romantic poets died in the early 1820s. So he would have been aware of them. Percy Shelley, 1822, Byron, 1824. And this man, John Keats, in 1821. So I think there might just have been a bit of influence there. So he wasn't born in London. He was born in North Yorkshire near Ripon. And his father was a hotelier in Harrogate, but somebody who saw his son's potential. So sent him down to London to train as an artist, and he ended up at the Royal Academy. He started as a portrait painter, but after a bit, he saw that he could exploit a particular area, a niche area. And the niche area was narrative panoramic scenes of Victorian life, how people lived, how people worked, and how people spent their time. Something that was considered slightly vulgar by higher-minded people in society, but it worked, and particularly with the sort of burgeoning middle classes of the Victorian period, his work became very popular. So he hit on something with a fair degree of success. Now we'll just run through some of his paintings, starting with one in London. There he was, and here's the painting. This is called the Railway Station. And in fact, it is Paddington Station. This is from 1862. My information says it's actually kept by Royal Holloway and Bedford New College. So I'm just wondering, you could come back to that later, whether Mike knows anything about it from that connection. But anyway, carrying on. So Paddington Station completed in 1854. Bustling crowds, people waiting to get on a train. If you go over to the right hand side of it, which has sort of disappeared with me seeing all the people as well, but perhaps you will be able to see it. There's a character there who's trying to get on a train, but he's not going to get on the train because he's being apprehended by two policemen, some sort of bankrupt or forger. But coming towards the centre, sort of left of centre, there's a lot of detail on this, so I apologise that you're only getting a general sort of sense of it because of the resolution, but hopefully this will work. You should be able to see a lady bending down. She's got a sort of orange dress and a white sort of headpiece on top. She's leaning down to say goodbye to her young son, who is going off to boarding school for the first time, carrying, of course, as one does, a cricket bat. Immediately behind him is his sibling, the elder son, and immediately behind that character standing up, dressed in black, in fact, is Frith himself, putting a sort of protective hand on the shoulder of the young man. So here we are with something in London. But of course, one of the things that the lower to middle classes could do with the advent of the railways is they could go out for the day. They could have a day trip. The idea pioneered by one Thomas Cook. organising day trips for the less well off. And there's a nice little story that the time when these started to become popular, something like 162,000 people descended on Brighton for a day, rather like Bournemouth, as the relaxation of lockdown, as a result of which the locals petitioned for the day return fare to be increased. And then this is where Frith wanted to, well, send people, or where he wanted to have as a theme for a painting. And this is Ramsgate Sands, otherwise known as Life at the Seaside, from 1854. So here we have people by the sea, they're relaxing, they're reading, they're taking in the sun. Of course, all of them are dressed in absolute sort of full dress. So if there wasn't any sun at all, they'd be utterly sweltering. There is one little child at the front, not in full dress. Well, she was in full dress. She's having a little paddle. Her mother is letting her do that. At the back, right at the background is the Pier Castle that then became an ice cream parlour. I do know Ramsgate quite well, like it or not. In front of that, in the midground, what I take to be a bathing machine, and then more towards the sort of top right-hand corner below the cliffs, the donkeys. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced a donkey ride. It's not cracked up to, it's not what it's cracked up to be, but it is and has been a feature, or was a feature, of the seaside. So not everybody liked it. It was derided again by people in the higher echelons of society as, quote, a piece of vulgar cockney business unworthy of being represented in an illustrated paper. That put you in your place, didn't it? But one person who did like it was Queen Victoria, who had spent some of her childhood days in the summer in Ramsgate, and she bought it. And so that means it's now in the royal collection. So that's one place you could go. What else could you do if you had a little chance to get out of London? Well, what about going to the races? And probably the most famous of Frith's paintings is this one. Again, continued apologies for the enormous amount of detail and difficulty with the resolution on screen. There are apparently something like 90 people in this painting. So this is Derby Day, 1858. 90 people, ordinary folk, but aristocrats, politicians, pickpockets, prostitutes, tricksters, and gypsies as well. Anybody who's been to Epsom, as I have over the years, will know that for the races there, and obviously the high point is the Derby, you can watch that in public space without paying an entrance fee from Epsom Downs. So the gypsies would set up there. And again, the higher echelons of society, the toffs, might go out and do a little tour by carriage to see how the other half live and what they look like. It rather sort of resembles, although I think a little bit later than that, people going to visit Bedlam as a sort of Sunday afternoon entertainment. A couple of things just to point out there. Over towards the right, you can make out a lady in a carriage with a very sort of vivid white headdress or hat on top, with, if you saw his face, a pretty nasty looking supercilious character standing next door to her. That's the man, and this is his mistress. But then going towards the centre and the left of that, sort of below where you can see the grandstand in the distance, you can see a man facing straight on. He's got a beige trousers, top hat, brown jacket, white shirt, and he's got his hands in his pocket. He's got his hands in his pocket because he's just been fleeced of his money by the thimble rigger who's next door to him, the one who says, you know, guess where the P is under the thimble, but you always get it wrong. And two across from that, there's a chap in a brown jacket. There's a chap there, if you saw it close, you'll see that he's actually holding cash. The way that, of course, is the accomplice saying, yes, look, I won loads of money, so can you, except you never would. So the essence of this in the positioning of people is that all the human life is at the front. It's a sort of, I don't know, sort of EastEnders on the day out. The horse racing, when you can see the stands there, is very much towards the back. Frith was an admirer of William Hogarth, died in 1764, and of Charles Dickens, who was born only 7 years before Frith. So to do a bit of a reference to Dickens, we've got this one. I've got this one. The crossing sweeper, also from 1858, held by the Museum of London. So here you have the young man with his broom. The crossing, I love the sort of euphemism of the crossing sweeper. That's the little lad who would actually sort of sweep the horse shit out of the way so that ladies of quality could cross the road without messing up their shoes. So it could be described as a sort of collision of street life with aristocratic life. And I mention it, or many of you will realise why that's been mentioned as a connection to Dickens, because those of you who know Bleak House will know that he was a minor character, but absolutely critical to the plot, was little chap Joe. So I think we've got a bit of influence there. Frith was elected to the Royal Academy in 1853, so a successful career, well known. What he didn't like very much as a style of painting was the pre-Raphaelite movement, those looking back to the sort of mythical past, and Rossetti, Holman Hunt, John Everett Millais, but also the aesthetic movement, which in a later painting he satirised, and it's called A Private View at the Royal Academy, 1881, and here it is. Now, Frith himself, because he and his family, as you can see, often appeared in his pictures, as well as other well-known people, is bang centre with a brown coat, sideways, talking to two ladies who are sitting down, but he has his back to the character who's been satirised. So go across a little bit, you'll see pretty much the tallest top hat there. He's towards the front, top hat, monocle, notebook and pen, making notes and declaiming to those in front of him who are willing to listen to him on the paintings, and that's Oscar Wilde. That was the person who was being lampooned at that particular moment. One of the things I think interesting there is that you've got a child standing in front dutifully, probably thinking, how soon can I get out of this? And two ladies who are in the group, but neither of whom seems to be actually watching what, looking at Wilde, or indeed looking at what he is talking about. There's a nice line of how he sort of Frith satirised those people, describing, quote, the folly of listening to self-elected critics in matters of taste. So I have called this The Lives of W.P. Frith, and here's the explanation coming up shortly of why. This is his painting Many Happy Returns of the Day, 1858, which is held by Harrogate Museums. And here is the idyllic family scene, the Frith family scene, a birthday party. The far left is Frith's wife, Isabella, who dutifully or not dutifully bore him 12 children, some of whom are there. In the middle, you have the little girl, his daughter Alice, with a garland behind her, and that's her birthday. Frith's mother is the older lady, just two in from where Isabella is. And then if it's not sort of disappeared and you're seeing other people, you've got an older gentleman sitting in the corner there, who I take to be his father-in-law, the sort of the grandfather, reading the paper, somewhat detached, probably thinking it's a pain in the neck with all these children here, with a little girl who is trying to bother him. But the key person, of course, is Frith himself. And there he sits at the head of the table, turned face on, looking pretty happy with the scene, pretty happy with himself as well. So there we are, patriarchal society, as one might say. It was applauded as a painting of showing moral improvement. It wasn't quite as popular as some of the other ones that I have mentioned. Moral improvement, but here we come to it, his other life. So he lived, and this is obviously more up-to-date photograph, in Pembridge Villas in Notting Hill, pretty sort of salubrious. A number of artists lived there, including Frederick Leighton and William Holman Hunt. But he had a secret life. A mile away, in the less salubrious Paddington, lived Frith's mistress, Mary Alford. Mary Alford was Frith's ward at one point. She was once living with them, and that's apparently where the affair started. Or how on earth you actually have an affair with all those children in the house and his wife? Well, I puzzle on that. So in addition to the 12 children Isabella bore him, he had another seven children by Mary Alford, which is pretty prodigious. If I hadn't been recorded, I would have done a joke about Boris Johnson at this stage, but I'm not going to do that. I don't know whether there's any sort of redemption in what I'm going to say now, but Isabella died in 1880, and Frith then married her, as they say, made a good woman of her. He managed this double life for a number of years, and it only came out when Isabella saw him one day posting a letter nearby, and then later that day received a letter saying he was having a lovely time in Brighton. Well, he was having a lovely time, but not in Brighton. So here is he in later life. I'm not quite sure of his age then. I've seen one where he was 83, but I think this might be a little bit younger. What do you make of that terribly respectable man? Well, of course, he was a scoundrel, a naughty boy in a sort of male online view of the world. But perhaps on this very serious matter of sort of gender studies, you could suggest that there is a certain sort of fragility of Victorian patriarchal society. So there we have the man, going back to the painting that I started off with. One thing I would take from that is, I think, see what you think, he looks a touch narcissistic. And if you need some backup for that, here's a final quote from Frith. The student need never be at a loss for a model, so long as he possesses a looking glass. Thank you.